Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and today's video is going to be all about the T-29. And no, I'm not talking about the Tier 7 American heavy tank. While it is slightly confusing, this is Wargaming's gift to us this holiday season. It's a Tier 3 Soviet premium medium tank, which was meant to be a successor to the T-28, but it was never produced past a few models because apparently the suspension system was far too complicated. And today I'm going to let you know whether the T-29 is worth keeping, of course if you're not a collector, or if it's going to turn into a free garage slot for you. So before we jump into the gameplay, let's take a look to see how the T-29 stacks up to some of its Tier 3 medium tank competition. Immediately we see that the damage per minute of this tank is rather lacking, especially compared to the derp on the M2 medium, but that's because this has a high caliber armor piercing derp with 110 average damage, and the caliber is a 76mm, and at tier 3 that's very impressive considering 66mm of penetration on its standard rounds will be enough to penetrate most tanks that it shoots. And if you want to dab that 2 key, well, it goes up to 75mm of heat pen. The core could be quite useful for making Panzer IIJs cry, and just go ahead, if you see a Panzer IIJ, fire all the heat at it, make them cry, don't let them pay to win. Of course, if you don't like the fact that sometimes armor piercing will bounce and you'd rather be using high explosive, then that is available on this 76mm as well. Your penetration drops to the same amount, 38mm, as the M2 medium tank. And so if you do manage to penetrate, you're going to be practically one-shotting tanks. So how about the gun handling? Well, it's really not very good news. 2.3 seconds aim time is not bad, but 0.55 accuracy? And combine this with some rather mediocre dispersion values when moving and turning the turret, albeit slightly better when moving than the M2, and poor depression angles of 5 degrees, and this tank just isn't very flexible. So now on to mobility. It's not too bad news here, 44 kilometers an hour forwards. Its power to weight is just over 17.5, and it has pretty good ground resistances compared to the other vehicles in this comparison, which gives the vehicle a rather decent traverse speed of 46 on hard, going down to below 20 on soft. Next up, let's take a look at the armor of the T-29, and none of the plates go above 30mm. And that is only in some parts on the front of the tank. This bar along the lower plate here, and this bar along the mid plate, or shall I say this box over the mid plate, which kind of looks like where the driver is going to be sitting. So the problem with this is that the T-29 will be overmatched by all 61mm caliber guns, but not all tanks have 61mm caliber guns, especially at low tiers. So let's see how the vehicle will hold up, for example, against the Panzerkampfwagen Ausführung C, you know, with that little pop gun that it has. Okay, if it's firing armor piercing with 33mm of penetration, then you can see that the T-29 kind of holds up pretty well. Of course, if they get flush on your side, they're still going to be able to go through, so try and angle against all of those little tanks, and at least you're going to be able to pull off a ricochet or two. Hit points wise, the vehicle is fairly healthy at 250, but one thing that totally sucks about this tank is the view range. 300 meters, it is as blind as a bat, even if you're using binoculars and you have a decent crew. I'm taking my Object 140 crew in this vehicle, for example, and even then, fully pimped out. The only thing I don't have on this tank is Brothers in Arms, and I'll explain why in a second. I have 407 meters view range with binoculars. Not too great, huh? And yeah, the reason why I don't have Brothers in Arms on this tank is because for some unreason it has the most bizarre crew loadout. A commander, a gunner, a driver, all normal so far, a radio operator, and another radio operator. And while I've got pretty much every Soviet vehicle in World of Tanks, there aren't actually that many Soviet medium tanks that do have radio operators, so unless you've got yourself a T-29, a T-34, an A-44, or even a T-34-85, you might actually struggle to be able to find radio operators. But thankfully, Wargaming seems to have given us 100% crew, and so that's a lovely little perk, and you could use these in one of your other tanks, one of your other Soviet medium tanks, for example. Just retrain them for credits. They're going to drop down to 90%, and then it won't take you too many games to build them back up to 100. But you know what? I think that's quite enough theory crafting. Let's see how this beast performs on the battlefield. So here we go. Our hero today is going to be Mac Wack, and he is rolling out on the streets of Himmelsdorf in the T-29. Now, Mac is what you would call a happy little strawberry, but I tell you what, if Mac keeps playing like he does in this replay here, he is not going to be a happy little strawberry for long. He'll end up being a salty unicorn, I expect. Mac is going to show you what this vehicle is all about, and that is, well, it doesn't have the best rate of fire, it doesn't really have the best DPM. When it hits, it hurts. Goodbye half the hit points, well, a third of the hit points off the medium 3, and yeah, well, you're definitely going to accelerate your progress to being a salty unicorn if you do manage to get a few more ammo racks just like that, Mac, as he one-shots the enemy PZ-1C. The PZ-1C is one of my favorite go-to vehicles at Tier 3 for just driving around and having a jolly good time. Doesn't look like that gentleman had a jolly good time in his German light tank there. And it looks like that medium 3 actually got blocked a little bit by the Stuart. Welcome to low tiers, and Mac is not going to hesitate at all as he finishes off the medium 3. That poor guy, I can imagine he's raging in chat right now. Where you block me, Stuart? Oh well, you know, low tiers. I don't think the Stuart really has a clue what's going on. He hasn't even played 1,000 games of World of Tanks, of course. Oh my word. Looks like Mac might be playing on the North American server. I'm seeing Canadian flags here. We've got some American flags in there. Some random French guy who might be playing on there, but maybe he just set his flag to France. Maybe he's French-Canadian. He was in France at the time. Focus on the T-29, QuickyBaby. What are you talking about? Now, but you get my point. This tank there's not really too much to say about it. It's got a gun, it's got armor that works against low penetration shots, and that's really all there is to say about it. Mac is going to put on some... Look at him, he's trying to snipe through these windows. He definitely has some eyes on him. I don't know, I think I need glasses or something. I can't really see the gaps through those windows like I used to be able to. Maybe I just need to get a bigger monitor. One of the two. Either way, Mac pulling off some great snapshots here, and he's up to 600 damage. But when your alpha damage is so high in this tank, and you've got, shall I say, good shell velocity, and that's one of the things that I think is very important on a tank like this, is to have good shell velocity. And the shell velocity, it's rather decent. It's 558. A lot of the high explosive derpy guns at the low tiers have got really bad shell velocity. Of course, if you do load heat in this tank, your shell velocity isn't getting that much better. How much is it? It's probably going to get worse, actually, when I think about it. What does the shell velocity go down to? 446? So yeah, the armor-piercing rounds, but they should be more than enough for all of your needs. Unless you're derping in at long range, then I guess you could use the heat. But the high explosive is also an option here. I just don't really see the need for heat rounds on this tank. Maybe if you get into a terrible matchup, but then again, tier 3 tanks now get preferential matchmaking, so to say, so they don't ever have to play against tier 5s. I guess maybe if you end up playing against a Matilda and the Matilda is in his godlike matchup, then there might be a little bit of a need. But you could probably just derp in high explosive rounds, or alternatively try and get flush on the side or flush on the rear, and you should be okay. So there you go, T-70, 117 damage. It just feels really weird to do this much damage at low tiers, right? When you think about it, like a tier 7 light tank sometime is doing 150 damage, and Wargaming's latest tier 8 premium, fair enough, it's got a much better rate of fire than this tank has. Well, actually not that much better of a rate of fire. The T-92, that's doing 150 damage as well. And so for a tier 3 tank to be doing 110 average damage with its 76mm, that is rather alarming. And it's no wonder that low tier games seem to just be over so quickly and the one-shots happen. It doesn't really give people enough time to learn. And what you're going to see here is an overmatch. That is the fact that you're shooting a 76mm caliber gun against a 20mm plate there, or possibly even a 30. It wouldn't have been a 30mm, it would have been the 20 on the lower plate there. And so that means that it doesn't matter what the angle is, it's always going to go in. And so even though the T-29 was angling his lower plate very well, Mac still takes him out the game, securing his 5th kill. Comes around the corner, gets 37 base defense points. Does he leave him on a single hit point? Well, you know what, Mac, you've already ammo-racked 2 tanks, I believe. The fact that you leave somebody on 1 hit point. Oh, not good play there, Mac. Definitely shouldn't have come around with the auto-aim. Probably should have come around in first person. Oh, no, Mac, maybe I was a little bit too kind to you at the beginning. Come on, chill, Mac, chill. Get there. Okay, at least you turned the tank. Looks like the turret traverse on this vehicle isn't the best. How does the turret traverse compare to all of the other vehicles? Turret traverse 34 degrees a second, worse than the M2, worse than the medium 3, a little bit better than the Chi-Ha. It's not terrible, but certainly not great, you know. You want to have your turret traverse a little bit better than that. Nevertheless, Mac now on a Top Gun at low tier, yes. And now he's going to hopefully come around the corner and finish off the T-70. Is Mac going to do that with 1,300 damage and 87 to be exact? what a round. Well, when I say what a round, maybe that was a bit of a cliche reaction. Mac just did what he needed to do, right? And sometimes you want a premium tank that just does the basics. This almost feels like it would be a really good tank to lead on to some of the Soviet heavies, which is the conclusion that I came to last year when Wargaming released the T-28, I believe, with the 85mm, albeit that's at tier 4. And this is a similar kind of tank. And so if you enjoy the T-28E with the F30 and its 160 alpha damage at tier 4, then maybe you can enjoy the T-29 with, albeit slightly lower damage, at tier 3. So MacWack, of course, nails his ace tanker for 1,105 base experience points. I think I got mine for something like 500 base experience points, even in a loss. It's probably one of the easiest tanks to ace right now. 7 kills also gets him a top gun, but one thing you might be interested in is, does it make decent credits? Well, 22,000 credits without a premium account. Not great, but certainly not bad. So does this look like it's going to be a fantastic premium tank to keep, to be able to make tons of credits, to be afford to play your Type 5 heavy with all of those filthy premium derp shells? Well, no, certainly not. You're still probably best to play a tier 5 or a tier 6 tank. And so I guess that means that the T-29 is probably either going to be for collectors or maybe a crew trainer. But the real shame about this tank is the fact that the vehicle just doesn't have a loader. So if you want to train up your Object 140 crew, for example, then one of your crew members isn't going to be getting the experience, and you're going to be wasting those boosted doubles if you accelerate the crew training on 2 radio operators that are only ever going to be in your mid or low tier medium tanks. And so in the end, do I think that the T-29 is a completely overpowered vehicle and you must keep it in your garage and it's one for the future? Nah, it's fairly forgettable. And while I personally wouldn't ever recommend it, I'm sure that some of you are going to get rid of it and use that garage slot for maybe a vehicle that might be more useful. So MacWack, congratulations on the carry in your T-29, and thank you for putting my name in the title so you could get my attention. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up, but if you hated it, give it a thumbs down. And if you're watching this video as it's released on Sunday, it's time for another World of Tanks Tech Tree Showcase on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And it looks like a few of you are already here in the chat. And this week, thanks to Tommy's suggestion and the 38 of you who backed him up, I'm going to be making my way up towards the WZ-111-5A, which was, if you checked out last week's top 10 video, the current tank with the highest average damage per game. So I guess the pressure's all on me tonight. And if you've never been to one of my Tech Tree Showcases before, they're like a miniature tank review starting from tier 1 and working my way along up towards tier 10. So you can see if it's a line that's worth grinding, or alternatively, if you already have the tanks, maybe pick up a few tips and tricks along the way. And so I'm really looking forward to seeing as many of you as possible right now on twitch.tv/QuickyBaby. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.